Jim does games, haha! Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Gin here with another League of Legends champion guide for you. Whenever Riot tries to deliver on a classic fantasy, they do their best to put their own spin to it. When there's a phoenix, for example, she's made of ice. A centaur? Let's make him a monstrous ghost. Today's champion runs in a similar vein. I present to you Vladimir, the Crimson Reaper. He's definitely not a vampire, we promise. Join me now, and let's learn how to Vladimir. Vladimir is a short-ranged, tanky mage who excels at going solo in the top or mid lane. He is a hemomancer, a blood mage, and as such does not use mana to fuel his spells. They all have either no cost or pull from his own health pool for power. He has very little in the way of crowd control, and instead shines on the battlefield by simply dishing out tons of damage over time to large groups and draining life from his foes to survive through long fights. Vlad's passive is a Crimson Pact, a deal with the devil, an agreement with Asmodeus, a contract with the Care Bears? I don't know who, but he's got a pact with someone. From this pact, he derives great strength, gaining ability power based on a percentage of his bonus health, and bonus health equal to a percentage of his ability power. Fortunately, to keep these bonuses from scaling into affinity, they do not stack with themselves. Crimson Pact is powerful, warping how he's built. We will come back and discuss it more once we get into items and runes and the like. The Crimson Reaper's Q is Transfusion. At no cost to himself, Vladimir drains the blood from his target, dealing damage to them and healing himself. This is an interesting one. Most damage, you would expect a projectile to fly towards the target and deal damage, right? This does the opposite. Vlad pulls the life force from his target, dealing damage instantly. It then creates a misty blood projectile that flies back to Vladimir and heals him. So they're two separate effects. Projectile blocking abilities like Yasuo's Wind Wall can't block the damage, but they will block your heal. Similarly, if Vlad can't be targeted, such as when he's using Zhonya's Hourglass, the healing projectile will just vanish. Transfusion is Vladimir's main source of harassment and sustain during the laning phase. The only thing holding its use back is cooldown, which gets very short as you level it, allowing you to constantly poke your enemies with it or last hit if you're having trouble and need to stay back. For this, we take a point at level 1 and max it out first. Our foe vampire's W is Sanguine Pool. He literally melts into a puddle of blood, gaining bonus movement speed for 1 second that rapidly decays, and becoming completely untargetable for 2 seconds. While Vlad's a goopy red smear on the floor, enemies who stand in him are slowed and dealt magic damage every half second that scales with your bonus health. He's also healed for a percentage of the damage dealt, which is good because the spell costs 20% of your current health to cast. While it is expensive and it has a long cooldown, Sanguine Pool is a fantastic tool for escaping and sometimes even diving after your enemies. Incoming lockdown spell? Incoming tower shot? Nope. Just dive into a pool and trickle away. Is trickle the right word? I don't normally talk about liquids moving of their own volition. Either way, for the excellent utility it provides, take a point in this at level 2, but max it out last as extra points don't do too much for you. For his E, Vladimir unleashes Tides of Blood, draining a bit of his own health to deal damage to all enemies within range. Each time you cast Tides of Blood, you gain an empowered stack that lasts for 10 seconds and stacks up to 4 times. Each stack increases Vladimir's healing and regeneration effects by a percentage, and increases both the base damage and the cost of the spell by 25% per stack. The healing and regeneration, by the way, includes effects from your allies as well. The only thing it doesn't affect are lifesteal and spell vamp. Tides of Blood is Vladimir's main source of area damage, letting him push lanes with ridiculous speed and inflict massive harm upon your enemies in teamfights. While it is quite powerful, its health cost can be prohibitive in the early game, and it really starts to shine once the laning phase is over. Because of this, we'll take a point in it around level 4 and max it out second. Lastly, Vladimir's ultimate is his only skill shot. Hemoplague infects the enemies in the target area with a strange mystical virus that lasts for 5 seconds. While infected, they are weakened, taking 12% extra damage from all sources. Once the 5 seconds are up, those infected are dealt magic damage, which is itself amplified by this effect. Hemoplague is a fantastic way to open up a teamfight. Drop it on a cluster of enemies, and you and your allies can go to work, melting them down faster than you can say, vampires don't sparkle. Take a point in it every chance you can. For summoner spells, Flash is pretty much always a great option. Vlad especially lacks mobility, so having that extra hop is always handy. Ghost is great for teamfights, allowing you to keep up with all the mobile action, and for escaping when you're alone. Heal combines well with his mini skills, especially his E, as its empowered stacks will increase the healing effect. It also acts as a miniature ghost, making it a useful potential replacement. And if you think you need some extra help burning down your targets, take Ignite. Now, as we consider our runes, masteries, and items, we must remember our passive Crimson Pact. I only said percentages earlier, but as of this video, it adds 2.5% of your bonus health as ability power, and 140% of your ability power as health. So, for every 100 bonus health you have, you'll get an extra 2.5 ability power. And for every 10 AP you have, you'll get 14 health. Anything that affects these two is therefore extra efficient on Vladimir. The runes are least affected by this, but still consider magic penetration marks, health per level seals, ability power per level glyphs, and either flat AP or movement speed quintessences. While the AP quints do give an extra 21 health, I much prefer movement speed. Vladimir has short range, as we've said, and really needs to be able to get into range to be of any use. Masteries can be done many different ways for Vladimir, and he functions well with all of them. To begin with the more standard-looking approaches, 2190 and 9210 give very solid, tanky sets while adding lots of extra damage. 9021 gives you the full speed and cooldown reduction benefits, as well as some spell vamp to start the game. Just be sure to avoid the mana-related masteries, which shouldn't be too hard. Now, let's get weird. 10173 tries to maximize usefulness particular to Vlad, getting all the defensive masteries that help him specifically, some movement speed in the utility tree to keep it with the action, and some AP and offense for further synergy. 15123 trades out the healing bonuses from Perseverance and Second Wind to get your hands on the Archmage masteries. Archmage and Juggernaut are particularly strong for Vlad, as those percentage bonuses create small loops within the game, give you more AP and health than you'd otherwise expect. And now, items. When starting the game, you have a number of options. It of course depends on whether you want to start rushing for specific items or not. If you don't want to rush anything in particular, Doran's Shield is probably your best bet. It's very strong in the early game, especially on someone who's fairly ineffective early like Vlad. It'll keep you sustained until you can start buying real items. Other options include Boots of Speed for dodging skill shots and weaving in and out of range to last hit and harass. Cloth Armor is strong versus heavy AD lanes. Amplifying Tome is great if you think you'll have an easy time against your opponent, boosting your effectiveness, but leaving you without many potions if you fall behind. And Ruby Crystal, while an unusual choice, is a nice defensive option that can lead into later utility, and remember, it even gives you a bit of AP while you do it. For your first big item, you have 3 different good choices. You'll probably want to get all of them somewhere down the line, but which one you get first is important. If you're having trouble in lane, especially against someone who's AD or against a burst mage, go for Zhonya's Hourglass. If the lane is going alright, neither for nor against you, you'll want to continue sustaining yourself, so grab a Hextech Revolver, which will eventually become a Will of the Ancients. Since he's all about health, Spell Vamp is exceptional on Vladimir. If you're doing really well in lane, stomping your opponent, rush for a Rabadon's Death Cap. Remember your passive. This makes you both powerful and tanky, and with the cap's passive alone, effectively increases your bonus health by a full 1%. Beyond the big 3 there, first you'll need some real boots. Sorcerer's Shoes are the footwear of choice, but if you're falling behind, you might get Ionian Boots of Lucidity instead. More cooldown reduction means more spellcasting and more healing. And if you're up against some heavy crowd control, don't forget that Mercury Treads are an option. Rylai's Crystal Scepter, already gold efficient before, is now an amazing choice for our blood-sucking friend. Since he generally has no crowd control, that slow will help a lot. Void Staff is strong as always, with the added bonus of about 100 extra health. Leandra's Torment, while a seemingly obvious choice, is fairly expensive for what it does and should only be taken if you're far ahead and want to stay there. If you're having trouble against AP opponents, Abyssal Scepter or Spirit Visage work well. The former helps your team more if you have a lot of mages on your team, while the latter is more selfish but synergizes really well with all of your abilities. Lastly, if you want to be tankier and kinda silly about it, grab a late Warmog's Armor. With 1000 health, you also get an extra 25 AP. Such value! Very tank. Wow. Can't believe I made that joke. Vladimir is fairly weak in the early game. During much of the laning phase, you should focus first and foremost on last hitting. The sooner you can grab one of those big items we mentioned, the better, as your power will spike up and you can start rolling faces. Try to last hit only using basic attacks, saving your transfusion to harass the enemy later. If you must though, say you're really low on health or your enemy can outpoke you if you try to go in, go ahead and use it on minions. Once you've got several levels in you, you can start pushing harder. Tides of Blood can quickly drain your health, but with the help of some items, you can start using it to push waves out like a boss. When there aren't any easy minions to take, you can head back to base and buy things, or hop into the jungle real quick for some easy gold and to top off your health. In the top lane especially, you can slip back to either the nearby white or golem camp depending on which side you're on. Once your lane's towers are cleared out, head to another lane to help and rinse and repeat. While he starts off weak, Vladimir scales up like a monster, potentially one of the strongest late-game champions around. Since he lacks the ability to hold enemies in place, he works best on a team with other initiators. Think Malphite or Sona, someone that can lock them down long enough for you to dive in afterwards and start dropping the beats down. Clustered team fights and tight enclosures are Vladimir's favorite places to feast on the blood of his foes. If you suspect a team fight will be starting shortly, start stacking up Tides of Blood. A full set of empowered stacks for a team fight will just melt whole clusters of enemies at once. You don't need an enemy nearby to use it, so you can stack as you run. The bonus health regen it gives will help make up for the damage you're taking. And once the stacks are full and you're waiting to start, only use the ability again right before the stacks vanish. That way you save your health longer. Once the fight starts, pick a target to focus. You'll deal massive damage in an area, but your Q can only hit one target. Lead in with Hemoplague, hitting as many champions as possible, hopefully 3 or more. Activate Q and E before diving into a sanguine pool beneath their feet, dealing more damage and hopefully healing you up some as well, all while dodging whatever damage they could do. Once you resurface, drop your Q and E combo again. If you timed it just right, you should be able to fit in both sets of combos before Hemoplague's effect ends. If the fight's still going, a Zhonya's Hourglass will let you freeze again while you wait for your transfusion and Tides of Blood to come back up. If they still aren't dead after all that, it won't be long now before you can do your Sanguine Pool diving trick again. Remember, with all this, try not to use Sanguine Pool or Zhonya's before the healing from transfusion reaches you. Otherwise, it fizzles out and you don't get any of it. Vladimir is a powerful late-game bloodsucker. Keep your empowered stacks high and the damage flowing, and you will lead your team to victory. So, thanks for watching, everyone. If you've enjoyed this guide, please let me know by hitting the like button. Speak up in the comments below if you have advice or questions. We're all here to learn. Subscribe for future stuff like guides, gameplay, and general silliness. Follow me on Twitch for streams and Twitter and Facebook to see what else is going on. Till next time, I've been Gin, and you've been watching me talk about a video game. Now get out there and make your enemies
kneel before Vlad.